have a guest on your program who says such things as you say and reiterate. You're quoted as having said to the Barristers Club at San Francisco, quotes, "I hope you will take your guns and shoot judges and police." The Washington Post, which is a liberal newspaper, describing the Black Panther newspaper as published here just a month or so after the assassination of Bobby Kennedy, which ran a drawing of Kennedy as a dead pig, photos of his Negro bodyguards described as, quotes, "LBJ bootlickers," and a flattering portrait of Sirhan. Now, it doesn't surprise you that this should attract public notice, does it?
No, because when we publish our paper, we hope that it will attract public notice. And the reason we first put the paper out in the first place because we knew that people were interested in that. So we're not surprised that that's true.
Well, what in the ideal society are the consequences, or ought to be the consequences, of such an attitude as you take?
Well, in an ideal society, my attitude would be unnecessary. See, an ideal society, I suppose,
where all the pigs would be dead.
All the pigs would be extinct.
Yeah.
People would no longer be in a position to function in a pig-like manner.
So therefore, the ideal society is merely one in which your ideals dominate, even if it requires the extinction.
I don't think that would be accurate. I think that an ideal society would be one in which all people would have a chance to bring their ideas to bear on the social process, and not to be subjected to the dictation of any particular person or any particular clique of people.
But now, as I understand it, you have been rather impatient with people who fancy themselves as struggling to help the cause of the black people. I see that you recently said about Julian Bond that, quotes, he is becoming a pig and might just end up being barbecued with the rest of the pigs. Suppose we start by discussing what it is about Julian Bond that makes you call him a pig.
Well, it's like this. Let me say this. There are always political differences within any group or with any particular spectrum of the political scene. Just as you yourself attack people and cut them up in your magazine and on your program, this is legitimate also in our part of the spectrum. The things that we feel are constructive, there are tactics and approaches that we feel are detrimental to the cause. We feel that Julian Bond, as a member of the Democratic Party, is part and parcel of the machinery of oppression. We feel that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are criminal conspiracies against the people. And we feel that anyone who affiliates with them, supports them, speaks good about them, writes good about them, are aiding and abetting this criminality.
Yeah. Now, how would you agree to test your position? That is to say, is there any test to which you would be willing to submit it on the basis of which you might conclude that you were mistaken? For instance,
I'm not concerned about any laboratory tests. My position is being tested daily in the real world, and that's all I'm concerned about, where the action is. It's being tested on the University of California campus. It's being tested in the black communities throughout this country. And it's not my individual position, it's the position of the Black Panther Party. And my position, the Black Panther Party position, is one and the same.
Yeah, now, yes, I understand that. The question I'm raising is, if you say that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are engaged in criminal conspiracies to deny you and how many Black Panthers are there?
I don't know.
200-300?
4 or 5.
4 or 5, yeah. To deny them their rights. Would you be willing to change your position if an election were held, the result of which was a very substantial repudiation of your views by the people who engage in this conspiracy? In other words, how can you ever find out whether you're right or wrong, or is it simply a religious feeling that you have, which is not susceptible?
The same way that we find out whether the John Birch Society or the Minutemen or the mad right wing of the Republican Party is right or wrong. We see who will be victorious in the end.
When is the end? You're talking about a millennium from now?
If the Black Panther Party is totally repudiated by the community and it becomes extinct, then we would say that there was nothing in the community to nurture its growth. And the same thing would apply to any other particular political tendency. At the present time, the Black Panther Party is growing. We have branches all over the country, and we feel that we have more work than we could possibly do. And for the foreseeable future, it looks like it's going to be more of that.
Mm-hmm. I see. So therefore, you would concede that if the Black Panther movement did not grow, this would mean that it was mistaken in its premises?
Well, I'm saying that if the Black Panther Party, having had its program aired in the community, ceased to exist, this would indicate to me that the people were not willing to support it.
Yes, but the fact that people aren't willing to support it doesn't mean that it's not a good idea, does it? Or are you making that act of faith in the democratic process? A good idea is, in the sense, to see a good political idea, I would say would be one that was functional and one that could help the people and that the people would relate to and the people would help to spread it and become part of it. A good political idea in a book somewhere on some shelf would seem to me to be non-functional. Suppose that Julian Bond were in the room at this moment, wouldn't he, in all likelihood, say, but don't you understand, I am working within the Democratic Party, I have a considerable leverage within the Democratic Party, I have addressed as many as 50 million people at one time via the Democratic Party. What's wrong with that? How would you reply to him?
Well, if he would say that, what I would do is talk about the Democratic Party, its various units, its history, and the fact that it's one of the chief instruments of oppression of the people. The Democratic Party is a national entity. It's composed of local units. It's infested with vicious racists, people who disenfranchise black people, who manipulate the political process, and who are in fact in power because they have usurped the political process. And the local units, you may have a unit in some part of the country that is not involved in any oppression of black people because there are no black people in that particular area. But they add their strength to the national organization, and this means essentially that they will be adding their strength to the racists from both the North and the South who are actively involved in perpetrating laws that oppress the people and practices that oppress the people and carrying out criminal wars of genocide against the Vietnamese people and constituting the bulwark of imperialism and oppression all over the world. So I don't think that Julian Bond would be justified in supporting that, and he wouldn't have very much to say to me because he knows I don't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about Dick Gregory? Is he a pig too?
Dick Gregory, he's all right.
He's all right.
He's a comedian.
But he's very enthusiastic about Julian Bond. Is he nevertheless all right?
Dick Gregory's all right with me.
Well, now, he's very much against the war, so is Julian Bond against the war. Now, Dick Gregory ran for mayor of Chicago a couple of years ago. Do you think he should not have run?
He ran for something in New York. Did you run for the mayor?
Yeah.
Same bag.
A lot of pigs beating it.
Some pigs run faster than others.
Yeah, was Dick Gregory mistaken in attempting to, what is this term you use, usurping the political process? What does that mean?
That means that there's supposed to be representative democracy in this country that's designed and calculated so that everyone in this country can have his will involved in all decisions in that process. And that there's gerrymandering going on in this country. There's intimidation of people. There's been outright murder of people who attempted to express the will of black people. And that's what it means to me. People who have illegally and against the interests of their constituents move to manipulate the political process for their own interests.
But you see, the trouble with your analysis is that you are always attempting to define the interests of the constituency instead of letting the constituency do it for itself.
Well, you see,
in point
I
of fact,
Dick Gregory was constituency, you see.
Well, yes, but you're only one part of it, aren't you?
One part of it.
Other people count too.
There's no one who can say that any individual doesn't have the right to speak out and offer any definition that he's capable of coming up with. And this is one of the things that I'm very much opposed to, that the power structure, the pigs of the power structure, seek to eliminate various people from the political process through various means, make them believe that they have no right to participate in it or to speak out or to define issues as they see them. I say that a wino stumbling down the streets of Sacramento in front of the Capitol has just as much right as you or Richard Milhouse Nixon to express his political opinions and to offer definitions.
So what?
So that, I mean, you're saying...
Who's disputing that?
You just got through disputing.
No. I'm just...
You just got through saying that I'm one individual and therefore there's something wrong with me offering these definitions.
No. What I'm saying is that you don't seem to be willing to grant precisely that freedom which you theoretically cherish of people to decide their own political future. When Dick Gregory ran for mayor of New York, 2% of the black community there voted for him. 98% voted for another candidate. Now, wouldn't this suggest a rather overwhelming repudiation of the point of view of Dick Gregory by people he nevertheless understands himself to be serving?
It would indicate to me that the people who did participate in that election are in vast need of some political education.
Yeah, that's what I thought you'd get around saying.
Yes.
In other words, people will be voting correctly when they vote as you tell them to, or as you educate them to.
When they begin to vote in their own interests, when they vote in such a manner as to destroy Dawson's machine in Chicago and to destroy Daley's machine in Chicago, then they will be functioning in their best interest, because Dawson and Daley are part and parcel of the oppression that those people are suffering. So as long as they support Dawson in office and Daley in office, I can say that they're functioning in a politically wise manner.
No, again, let's however understand the consequences of what you have said, which is that until people get around to voting in their interest as defined by you, they are voting wrongly and are, quote, usurping the political process. I think it's important we say that because I have found in your literature...
I think it's important we make a distinction because it's not a case of me standing up and making definitions and calling on everyone else to coincide with my definitions. This is a matter of a tradition of struggle against a system of oppression. It's a matter of a heritage and perpetuating a heritage of struggle, and there is some consensus involved in that, and it's not contributed by any one particular person.
Well, no, I suppose you admit a few people into your deliberations, but nevertheless, they continue to be a very, very small minority, and I therefore must stand by my point, which is a sort of that there is the Marcusian edge to your thought, that people don't vote for their own best interest because they are constantly deceived, and that only revolutionary experience will cause them...
I don't think there's any doubt that people are deceived. You have the pigs of the mass media who manipulate information, they distort statistics, they distort reports, essentially they distort reality so that people have their heads filled with lying and vicious propaganda, and they're in no position to really function in a realistic manner.
Well, now, why are you uniquely situated to have penetrated to this great national delusion? Why isn't Julian Bond as bright as you and as morally concerned as you and as penetrating as you? Well, what happened to Bond that corrupted his vision?
I'm not making any of the claims that you're attributing to me.
Well, there must be some reason for your vision, isn't there?
I don't claim to have any vision, see.
Well, but you do?
Wait a minute. This is what you're saying. So if you're saying this means you've made the assessment, so you tell me what you see in me that makes you draw that conclusion.
Well, I've read your book, and I see how you handle people who disagree with you. They're pigs, they're murderers, they're Nazi-like, they're everything.
People who disagree with me don't fall in that category. I have disagreements
but everybody
with
from
people
Bond to
within
Reagan.
The Black Panther Party, and I don't call them pigs. I just say that they're mistaken, or I disagree with them.
All right.
But we define the pigs as those who are actively involved in the machinery of oppression. The three categories of evil: the avaricious businessmen, demagogic politicians, and the racist pig cops. These are the pigs of the power structure. And Julian Bond wouldn't fall in that particular category. He would fall in the category of all the other black Democrats who are involved in that. The lackeys from the colony helping the oppressors from the mother country carry out their oppression.
Now, would you argue that any effort of the kind made by, say, Whitney Young or Julian Bond or Martin Luther King or anybody to affect a reconciliation between the races is a waste of time, or is it also another enterprise in corruption because it retards the true revolutionary posture that you're seeking to cultivate?
I think that, essentially what it does, it helps to create a blind and violent situation. In fact, it has helped to create the situation that we're in today, because these men go behind closed doors with the businessmen and the politicians, the power structure, and they propose certain programs, and they force these programs off as being capable of silencing the dissent in the black community. And they don't work, and so that when the people move to rebel, it's directly a result of the failure of leadership to offer valid solutions.
Well, Martin Luther King advocated 3 specific pieces of national legislation, all of which were enacted into law. So if he were here, mightn't he say that, in fact, his agitation did help?
Well, he was here, you see, and he was agitating, and he had a particular approach to the situation, namely nonviolence, and he died by violence at the hands of an assassin, you see. Someone who opposed his program very actively.
Did you publish a prettified picture of his assassin as well as the assassin of Bobby Kennedy?
What kind of picture?
Prettified.
Prettified. No, we didn't publish a prettified picture of Martin Luther King. We don't consider Martin Luther King to be one of the pigs of the power structure. He was moving against the power structure in a manner that we feel was not calculated to bring the power structure down.
Why?
Well, because essentially it helped to strengthen the power structure.
Why?
Because it functioned within the channels that the power structure can deal with.
In other words, anything that doesn't actually require a dissolution of the power structure is simply a form of perpetuation of tyranny?
Well, it's helping it to function, because Martin Luther King, when he first started his nonviolent tactics, they were new to the American scene. And because they were new, the pigs didn't really know how to deal with them, so that some gain could be made. But after repetition of this process over the months and over the years, the pigs had programmed it so that they were perfectly capable of containing it and limiting its effect.
For instance, where?
Where? All over the South.
Can you give me an example?
Pardon?
Can you give me an example?
Well, we could give you an example of his Poor People's campaign, his Poor People's March to Washington. It was a total failure. Didn't bring down the power structure, and it resulted in a humiliating defeat for his forces, you see.
No, but the Poor People's Campaign was not similar to the techniques used in Montgomery, Alabama successfully.
Yes, but it was the same principle involved. The masses of people moving against the system, but moving non-violently, and led by a Pied Piper who would sing sweet songs to the mother country, that's all.